Imagine trying to fix a catastrophic software glitch on your laptop, but the only tool you have in your hand is a physical type measure. You keep measuring the screen, you're measuring the keyboard.
Right, writing down incredibly precise data about the dimensions of the hardware.
Exactly. You can measure that monitor down to the millimeter, but it is never, ever going to fix the carrot. And I mean, we were doing the exact same thing with modern life.
Yeah, we optimize our diets, our sleep data, our stock portfolios with the hardware, but our inner software is crashing.
Which brings us to the mission of today's deep dive into our sources today, which are a fascinating stack of articles and essays. We are taking the concept of spirituality completely out of the scented candle aisle.
Stripping away the stigma entirely.
Yes, and unpacking how it is actually the most underrated, highly rigorous, and practical framework for modern sanity. And cognitive resilience, really. Because we live in a hyper-rational world that prioritizes the measurable, leaving a massive portion of you listening feeling persistently, existentially malnourished.
What's fascinating here is that to actually utilize this tool to fix that malnourishment, we have to look at why our culture threw it in the junk drawer to begin with. In our necessary historical move away from the dogmas of institutional religion, we discarded organized ritual.
Which, makes sense for people who are deeply skeptical of authority.
Absolutely. But we inadvertently threw out the underlying deliberate cultivation of our inner architecture. We threw out the baby with the bathwater. The sources call this the science proxy problem.
Right, this idea that modern culture built an epistemological wall.
Exactly. We decided that if something cannot be measured, it simply isn't real. We value atoms, data, deliverables, and income.
Because spirituality has no deliverables you can put on a spreadsheet to show your boss, the secular world just treats it as an archaic, unproductive pursuit.
Right, a total waste of time in a capitalist framework.
Okay, let's unpack this, though, because I want to push back on that epistemological wall. Science relies on unmeasurable, subjective things literally all the time.
Oh, for sure.
Think about going to the doctor with a severe migraine. They ask you to rate your pain on a scale of 1 to 10. That is entirely subjective.
There is no blood test for the exact sensation of a headache.
Exactly. But we don't pretend the pain isn't real just because a machine can't quantify it. It feels like we apply a bizarre double standard to the human mind. But honestly, isn't some of the modern skepticism towards spirituality totally justified?
How do you mean?
Well, look at what gets labeled spiritual today. I literally saw an advertisement yesterday for a mindful $200 water bottle.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
It's just like Instagram quotes, expensive crystals, and this vague toxic positivity. We're basically trying to buy our way into enlightenment, which feels like taking a supercomputer, the human mind, and using it as a fancy drink coaster.
Yeah, we're trying to consume our way out of a problem that was created by consumption. The sources highlight a really powerful metaphor for this, actually. People mistake the bath salts for the ocean.
The bath salts for the ocean.
Yeah.
That is brilliant.
Right. That soft, commercialized version of spirituality has become so incredibly loud that it crowds out the real thing. True spirituality isn't about buying the right yoga mat or feeling a vague sense of peace.
No, not at all.
It is a rigorous confrontation with mortality, the mystery of being, and the dissolution of the ego.
Hold on. When you say dissolution of the ego, I feel like people might picture an intense psychedelic trip or shaving their head and running off to a monastery. What does that actually mean for the listener who is just washing their dishes or commuting to work right now?
It is simply the profound relief of realizing that not everything is about you. The ego is the part of your mind constantly narrating your life, assessing threats to your status and comparing you to others constantly.
It's exhausting.
It really is. And dissolving it doesn't mean you cease to exist. It just means you stop taking the narrator so seriously. You realize your personal drama is a tiny fragment of a much larger reality.
So it's a shift in perspective.
Exactly. But because the shallow, commercialized version of this is so prevalent, the demanding, ego-reducing version just gets ignored. And worse, when the corporate world does try to adopt spirituality, they trap it in what the text calls productivity capture.
Oh, right. Like mindfulness suddenly being framed strictly as a focus hack.
Yes, just to help you answer emails faster. Or yoga is just flexibility training to keep your stamina up for the corporate grind. It completely instrumentalizes the inner life.
You're meditating just to be a more efficient worker bee. You are trying to optimize the infinite. I mean, I understand the concept that spiritual practice is supposed to be a space of intentional uselessness.
Right, having no external deliverable.
But honestly, if I sit and do nothing for 20 minutes, I just feel intensely guilty about the emails I'm ignoring. How does someone actively break out of that productivity guilt without feeling like they're just, failing at life?
By recognizing that your guilt is a conditioned response to an economic model. It is not a fundamental truth of human nature. We have engineered a society that accelerates, and it demands that you prove your worth through constant output.
So stepping out of that frame feels like failure because the system is explicitly designed to make you feel that way.
Precisely. Spiritual experience rarely arrives at speed. It requires a willingness to sit in the gaps between activities without trying to extract value from them.
But modern secular culture anchors your worth to incredibly volatile external variables that force you to keep moving: your job title, your financial portfolio, how many likes your last post got.
Right, all external.
We fill every single gap with a microburst of content because stopping means facing the terrifying fact that our identities are tied to things we can't actually control.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the authors call this identity fragility. If who you are is tied solely to what you produce or how people perceive you, your psychological stability is constantly at risk.
You are standing on shaky ground.
Exactly. One bad quarter, one layoff, or one algorithm change, and you completely lose your sense of self because your anchor was tied to something that is constantly moving.
It's like tying your self-worth to a wildly volatile tech stock versus anchoring it in a completely unhackable gold standard. The tech stock is your job title or your social media clout. It can literally crash overnight.
Yeah, let's take that tech stock analogy further. Unlike a financial market where you at least know the baseline rules and engagement, the social media algorithms and cultural trends change daily without any transparency.
It's totally arbitrary.
You are investing your identity in a rigged casino. This is where the rigorous mechanics of spirituality step in as a defense system. Practices like Stoic mindfulness or Vipassana meditation are not about relaxation.
They aren't just taking a deep breath.
No, they're cognitive training to build the detached observer.
Okay, let's break down the mechanics of that. How does sitting with your eyes closed actually build a defense against a rigged casino?
It introduces a wedge of time between a stimulus and your reaction. In Vipassana, for example, you are trained to focus intensely on physical sensations, or just the breath.
Right.
When a thought arises, say, intense anxiety about a project at work, you are trained to notice it, label it as just a thought, and watch it pass without clinging to it.
You aren't suppressing the anxiety, but you also aren't letting it drive the car.
Exactly. You realize you're the sky, and the anxiety is just a cloud passing through. You build a psychological firewall.
Oh, wow. That's a great way to put it.
And this layer of awareness cannot be downsized, defunded, or canceled.
Yeah.
Taking your inner life seriously is a quietly radical act of independence because you are refusing to let the market dictate your internal value.
Okay, so this internal firewall sounds incredibly practical for dealing with, a stressful commute, a rude email, or even losing a job.
Right, everyday stressors.
But what happens when the absolute worst happens? When you get a chronic illness diagnosis or you lose someone you love? You can't just observe your way out of that profound grief.
The problem of profound suffering really highlights the stark division of labor between scientific materialism and applied spirituality. The scientific frame is extraordinarily powerful at explaining the mechanics of the universe.
Sure, it can explain the neurological firing in your brain when you were sad.
Or the precise cellular mutation of an illness. But it has absolutely nothing to say about the meaning of grief or love or beauty. Rationalism might explain the mechanics of a crisis perfectly, but it does not give you the strength to endure it.
And the materialist response to anxiety or pain is almost always usually suppression. We want information, solutions, and immediate closure.
We treat pain like a bug in the code.
Right. If we feel pain, the modern reflex is to chemically suppress it, endlessly distract ourselves, or slap a toxic positivity sticker over it to make the suffering shorter. We are fundamentally terrified of irresolvable mystery.
Because materialism views suffering as a glitch in the hardware that needs to be eradicated. Spirituality, conversely, provides what the text calls existential stamina.
Existential stamina, I like that.
It does not try to eliminate suffering. It transforms your relationship to it. Under a spiritual framework, failure, heartbreak, and physical pain stop being random, meaningless punishments.
They become the raw material for character development and wisdom.
Exactly. It takes passive endurance and turns it into active transformation.
Well, here's where it gets really interesting. Earlier, we talked about how secular culture only values measurable metrics. Well, the sources have a massive metric here that completely blew my mind.
Oh, the addiction statistic.
Yes, personal spirituality is linked to an 80% reduced risk of addiction. Let me repeat that for everyone listening, an 80% reduced risk, alongside significantly lower rates of depression and burnout.
It's a staggering number.
This isn't just poetic philosophy. This is a highly effective, measurable psychological intervention.
Yeah.
But why? What is the actual mechanism making someone 80% less likely to fall into addiction?
Well, addiction is fundamentally a disease of isolation and an inability to sit with present moment pain. It is the ultimate urge to flee reality.
To just escape the discomfort.
Right. And spiritual practices physically rewire the brain, specifically the default mode network. That is the part of the brain responsible for mind-wandering and egocentric thinking.
The narrator we talked about earlier.
Exactly. By routinely practicing distress tolerance, like sitting with discomfort during meditation or contemplative prayer without reaching for a distraction, you literally weaken the neurological reflex to escape.
You are treating the root cause, which is the sheer terror of being alone with your own mind rather than just treating the symptom of the substance abuse.
That shifts the entire paradigm. We are experiencing skyrocketing rates of burnout and, deaths of despair, and we keep trying to solve them by optimizing the external world.
We buy better mattresses, we download new productivity apps.
But we completely neglect the internal architecture that keeps us sane when the external world inevitably breaks down.
And it seems like when you stop constantly distracting yourself from pain, you actually regain the capacity to see the world again. The sources tie this directly to our shattered attention spans today.
Modern life engineers fragmented attention. We ingest information in relentless microbursts, looking at thousands of data points daily, but perceiving almost nothing of substance.
Just scrolling and scrolling.
The text diagnosed this as a chronic case of cognitive superficiality. Our economic model relies on keeping you perpetually dissatisfied, manufacturing a sense of lack, so you believe peace of mind is just one more purchase away.
Or one more doom scroll away. But spirituality acts as a counterweight by shifting your baseline orientation from acquisition to subtraction.
Yes, the Epicurean approach.
Right. The sources bring up Epicurean and minimalist truths here. Now, when most people hear Epicurean, they think of lavish feasts and indulgence.
Sure, wine and grapes in excess.
But historically, Epicurean philosophy was about achieving tranquility by systematically eliminating unnecessary desires, not endlessly fulfilling them. You don't achieve internal clarity by adding more external stimulation. You achieve it by clearing the static.
Which is exactly the opposite of our modern instinct. We try to cure our overwhelm by consuming more advice about overwhelm.
Oh, that is so true.
Spiritual practice is training in deep, sustained attention by simply doing less.
It's like cleaning a filthy windshield. You aren't adding a new, beautiful landscape to the world. You aren't buying a better view.
No, the view is already there.
Right. You're just taking a rag and wiping away years of grime, the bug splatters, the dust, so you can finally see the astonishing view that was sitting right in front of you the entire time.
And when you wipe away that grime, what you actually uncover is awe. And awe isn't just a fleeting emotion, it is a vital survival mechanic.
How so?
When you engage in deep attention, like spending an hour in silent contemplation, or simply slowing your processing speed down to match physical reality, you remember that being alive in this vast, incomprehensible universe is extraordinary.
Children experience wonder almost constantly. They're mesmerized by a puddle, a beetle, their own hands. Adults lose it under the heavy weight of routine. But awe is fundamentally a scaling mechanism, isn't it? It physically shrinks your perception of the self.
It does. Neurologically, when you experience profound awe, like looking at the Milky Way or standing at the edge of a massive canyon, the part of your brain associated with the self literally powers down.
Your problems do not get solved in that moment.
They don't, but they just become mathematically insignificant compared to the scale of the universe. That is why awe is so restorative. It enforces a break from your own ego.
It naturally produces humility and generosity.
Yes, and it loosens the anxious self-preoccupation that makes modern life feel so unbearable. You move from constantly reacting to threats to simply perceiving existence.
The modern world traps us in this lonely individualism where everything is about standing out, your career, your brand, your singular achievement.
It's all about me, me, me.
But spirituality reminds you that you are part of a massive interconnected web and that belonging is deeply therapeutic. It starves the ego, which is exactly why our hyper-capitalist culture undervalues it, but it profoundly feeds the mind.
Look at the contrast between how a purely materialist worldview handles human experience versus an applied spiritual framework. A materialist defines success by the accumulation of capital, status, and recognition.
While a spiritual focus defines success by mastery over internal desires.
And alignment with deep values. A materialist views time as a resource to be aggressively optimized and filled with deliverables. A spiritual focus views time as a canvas of presence to be deeply experienced. These are two completely different operating systems for reality.
So, what does this all actually mean for you? The listener is sitting in traffic, folding laundry, or prepping for a brutal week of meetings.
Applying it to the real world.
Right. We spend an enormous amount of energy using modern tools to build our lives. We meticulously track our health metrics, we manage our bank accounts, we optimize our schedules, but all of those things are merely in service of a life well lived. Spirituality asks the prior question, what does a life well lived even mean?
This raises an important question because we really have to interrogate what we are actually building with all of this hustle. Technology and medicine are miraculous. They improve our convenience, our communication, and our physical longevity.
But a longer life does not cure emptiness.
No, it doesn't.
Huh.
A faster smartphone does not solve identity confusion or the terror of mortality. Spirituality, once you strip away the superstition and the commercialized bath salts, is the practical art of managing your internal state.
It is the rigorous discipline of ensuring that your stability is no longer held hostage by the unpredictable swings of the external world.
Exactly.
It's not about believing impossible things, and it certainly isn't about running away to a monastery to hide from reality. It is about maintaining contact with the parts of human experience that absolutely refuse to be quantified, managed, or put on a corporate spreadsheet.
Which brings us right back to that broken software we started with.
Yes. You cannot fix your inner code with a physical tape measure. You have to stop relentlessly measuring the hardware and finally look at the code itself. And so the sources leave us with one final, lingering question to mull over today.
And it's a profound one.
It really is. In the genuinely unproductive gaps of your own life, in those rare moments when you aren't optimizing, when you aren't producing, and when you finally put the screen down, wait, who are you really? Beneath all the roles and the noise,